A moment of silence. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to
the flag
of the United
States of America
and
to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty
and justice for all. All right. Secretary, can you call the roll?
Yes, and just a reminder for our board, I believe this is being streamed as our normal board meetings are. Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Diffenderfer.
Here.
Mr. Eggleston.
Here.
Mr. Enders.
Here.
Mrs. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mrs. Mungold.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Minnick.
Here.
Okay, great.
Do we have anyone signed up for public comments, Eric?
We do not. I double checked right before the meeting. No one has reached out to make a public comment.
Thank you. Board presentations, I don't see any. Is that correct as well, Lee?
That is correct.
Okay. Board reports, Capital Area Intermediate Unit, Mr. Differdorfer.
No report.
Harrisburg Area Community College, Mr. Peterson.
Nothing.
Okay. Act 32.
No report this evening.
And Mr. Eggleston, PSBA.
No report, Sonny.
Okay. Sorry. Supervisor of Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Troutman, give a report.
I do. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I'm doing this over my phone now. I couldn't get my laptop to function correctly. So I'm going to jump around here a little bit. Actually, just today, we had a contractor in doing some warranty work on the elementary school. The one door wasn't functioning the way it was designed, so they changed a part out on it today. They took advantage of the students and most of the staff not being in there today. Sage completed the camera installation. I have in my notes here, which were posted, I believe last Thursday, I put them on Agenda Man, that there's still a camera that needs to be replaced. That one was actually done on Tuesday. That one was replaced. So again, part of that is not accurate. So they are complete. Things are up and functioning with our camera project at the elementary school.
Dan, and that project for the grant then is complete at this point. There's nothing outstanding.
That is correct.
Okay. And that was, just so the board is aware, something that we are using some PCCD grant monies for. So we'll work on getting that finalized and submitted. Thanks, Dan.
Sure. Yep, absolutely. Again, looking for requesting quotes for next year's budget. Started doing that, gathering some information for Eric. The other thing is, just want to bring everyone up to date on how we are making out with our custodial staffing. I won't read my report there word for word, but long story short, we are waiting on the gentleman from the custodial outsourcing company to supply us that person. We're waiting for one clearance yet to come back. So until we have that clearance, which we were expecting this week, that didn't happen unless it happens tomorrow. But hopefully sooner than later, we'll be able to fill that void Right now, all the other custodians are pitching in, working some overtime and stuff, taking care of the high school second shift area there. So otherwise, open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions for me in general or my report in particular.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Troutman.
Thank you.
Mr. Leiter.
Oh, Mike did text me. He said no audio, restarting laptop. That was at 6:04. Maybe we can skip and come back to him.
Okay, yeah, we just saw him, but then he disappeared again. Mr. Ross.
Evening. Hopefully mine's all working as well. I'm doing a bit of an odd setup to get this streaming as well from home. So there's a few kind of big items this month on my report. The biggest one is at the top of the list that I'm hoping is a good answer to our domain name change that we've been kind of debating for better part of 5 or 10 years now. It is our recommendation after meeting with all of admin and discussing our options to move to a millersburgsd.us and .org option. That was actually Eric's idea to bring us into a more plain language style instead of trying to abbreviate anything.
And it is, yeah, blame me, John, but it is a format that I've noticed that a lot of the districts within our IU have changed to, and I'm assuming across the state or maybe even country. Again, is it shorter? It's a little bit shorter, but is it plain? Can people understand it? Can you remember it? Does it get rid of the MLBGSD confusion? I think yes. MillersburgSD.us, MillersburgSD.org. So yeah, love it or hate it, you can blame me for that.
So that is our recommendation to move towards those. It would be at least a 2-year change to actually get it onto that new domain, and then we would hold the old domain at least for 5 years, just to make sure that all existing emails, accounts, workflows, and everything can still route to the new one. At that point, we would probably look at shutting it down, but we'll see where we stand at that point. I would look to move us to .us being the primary domain for staff, substitutes, board accounts, and all employees, and making the .org purely student domain so that we no longer have a .us for both and a .org for both, just to try and eliminate some of that confusion. If there are no issues or questions with that, I'd like to try and bring that for a vote during the voting session.
Any questions?
Jonathan, just to maintain that domain name would be super minor cost-wise if you did want to go beyond that 5 years, right? So that's just to maintain and not let that go out to the public to be used in any sort of way. To hold on to that would be $50 a year or something, right?
I believe 50 to 100-ish. That was going to be the kind of follow-up piece. The recommendation is to actually purchase those two domains either now or at the end of the month after the voting session to get them reserved early. I don't think anybody would come around and grab them from us, but that way we have them, we can start working on it, because those domains will only cost $50 to $100 a year total. I think I looked at it for 5 years and it was about $150. So multi-year discount definitely played in there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Does everyone like that suggested change?
Well, you gave us two options, to hate it or love it.
Yeah,
So,
well, all right. So do you hate it?
no, I'm fine with making that change, and I'm fine with, I mean, we can wait till the next meeting to procure them, that's fine.
Any other feelings?
I like it.
I see an okay thumbs up from Josh. Same thing from Jason Enders. Mr. Diffendorfer, you came off mic.
Yeah,
Ron,
no, that sounds good to me.
seen a lot of thumbs up. Tennille, I see a hand raise. Got a question, Tennille? Maybe not.
No, that was supposed to be a thumbs up. Sorry, wrong
Okay.
emoji.
All right. So it sounds like we're all good with the idea of making the change. Probably would wait till we vote on it, for it's official. But yeah, sounds like a plan.
And I'll work with Eric and make sure we have that on the work session. And if that does pass, we'll get it reserved early and start working with the IU to get that all planned out. The next kind of big one that shouldn't have any real effect on, well, anything noticeable. The CAIU is changing their email security vendor, and they actually started implementing that just this past January. So that's actually going to take effect this year. Basically, our choices are either follow suit with them or spend the next 6 to 12 months having another vendor bake-off like they did. So for the sake of not spending a year doing that, we're going to be taking their offer. It actually is the exact same cost within a very, very small margin. Right now, we're looking at maybe $100 difference, but just as aware, that is changing, and that's because of the IU's decision to make that change. With that, they're also starting to ramp up their cybersecurity initiatives, and we're kind of taking that as well. I've sent out some emails over the last couple of weeks to months, both to all the employees as well as board members, of what's changing with that. We're doing all this both following CAPPAC's recommendations as well as all of their policies, regulations, state laws, federal laws. So we're doing our best to stay ahead of the curve and not get caught up in a cyber incident. In terms of the phones, we've had some kind of lingering issues with phones since moving out of Linkerville. We believe as of kind of mid-January to now, that's all sorted. The old Linkerville number is finally deactivated after it took the IU quite a while to find it, but there was a spot that it was still getting activated and pushing out to 2 handsets. So that's all shut down. We're good there. We've also been putting handsets in a few spots we didn't expect to have as teaching locations, so that's something we weren't expecting, but we're making sure we have phones and security in every room. We're also still working to get the main greeting re-recorded due to Dr. Bisdell being out for a couple of reasons that kind of got put on hold a little bit, but hopefully we'll have some time here soon to get that all sorted. And the last big one, we did roll out Aptigee Engage. Aptigee is our website host and emergency calling system. Engage is a new newsletter / social media posting tool. It'll allow clubs such as the Tatler to make community-led announcements and newsletters that we can then push out to social media. So we've started training with them to get that set up. So hopefully we'll have some of those rolling out here in the next couple weeks for everyone to kind of look forward to. But that should be it for mine. If there are any questions.
Questions? Thank you.
Mr. Minnick, Mr. Leiter has joined me here in my office. If we want to jump back to his report, I'll give him my chair. No, there you go.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the audio problems and the delay to my report. There are 4 items on my report. 3 of them I would draw your attention to. One is the district wellness policy. It's required by policy that we review it yearly and that it's brought before a stakeholder committee comprised of teachers, principals, administrators, board members, etc. That meeting is scheduled for the end of February in the Susquehannock Center at 3:20 p.m. I did send out a district mailing, and I realized after I was told by some people that I forgot to put the 3:20 p.m. in the notification to the public. So I'll be sending out a reminder email to make sure everybody knows it's at 3:20 p.m. After that policy is reviewed and recommendations are made or lack thereof, I'll bring that policy to the board for review and approval for review. Also, PDE changed the state science standards. And those standards will go into effect 2025-26 school year. At our next in-service meeting, I have several science vendors which have aligned their materials to the PA Steels. That's the name of the science standards in Pennsylvania now. And teachers will be looking at those to make a recommendation. I bring this up to the meetings mostly because it has a financial impact to my budget, and just wanted you to be aware that there's certainly a cost there. Also, I was hoping to have it attached to the board agenda today, but I did not succeed at that. I will email the high school course selection guide to all of you probably early next week. I'm hoping to get approval for the high school course selection guide at the February regular meeting, but it's not quite completed, so I don't have it to you yet. Those are the items I was going to bring forward to you tonight. Do you have any questions for me?
Doesn't sound like it. Thanks, Mr. Leiter.
All right, you're welcome.
And moving on, athletic director's report. Not sure who's here. Corey, there you go.
Corey's here. You can hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. For the report that I submitted yesterday, the winter sports season, I point out Emma Miller reached her a personal milestone of scoring 1,000 points yesterday in the game versus last night versus Upper Dolphin. So kudos to her. Gave the spring sports update. We are ready to go. Schedules are fairly locked in, and we included in the report our preliminary sign-up numbers as listed. And the only other item of note was the 2 resignations. Both Clayton Bouchard and Shannon Fillier have resigned as track coaches, and as well as John Kulik from volleyball. And we wish to throw them a shout out and recognize them for their years of service, and we appreciate their efforts. And
Thanks.
That's all I have.
Thank
Sir.
you. Any comments, questions? Hearing none. Oh, Mr. Miller? Oh, guess not. Okay, thank you. And definitely congratulations to Emma, her 1,000 points. Dr. Bisdell.
Yes, good evening. I actually have a special education report for you this evening. I'm not sure, last I checked, agenda manager had duplicated Mr. Leiter's report in my space there, so we'll fix that. Just some updates in the special ed department. So our speech clinicians have a plan in place to make up some missed time from the beginning of the school year when we were without a speech therapist. So that should be taken care of over the next couple of months. Carrie Morgan started this week as our new autism support teacher, and she hit the ground running with her paras, who have been doing a great job in that classroom as well. I have communicated actually now with parents of 4 students who are currently in out-of-district placements about the potential for them to return to district programming before the start of next school year. All 4 of those students have progressed to a point that they can be ready to transition, and those parents were supportive of that. So that's some pretty exciting news. A lot of progress for those students, and just exciting to bring them back to our community. After several months of working, I'm hopeful that we're getting close to securing a placement for one of our students who has been in need since the start of the school year. I've been working with the family and our special education attorney to confirm details and ensure that we'll be able to provide an appropriate program for him where he can achieve success. Let's see, next I have John Gombos from the Bureau of Special Education is coming to district next week to meet with Mrs. Whitmer and I. We're going to review details of our programs, kind of pick his brain, discuss issues of compliance, also plan to talk about full-time special education classrooms, locations of programs, and details like that. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And at the end of February, I'll have my contract meeting with the Capital Area IU. And just kind of a note, I do anticipate using less purchase services next school year. So that will be positive for our bottom line. Any questions?
Hearing none. Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Bisdell, your report is now back on
Thank you.
demand if you do a refresh.
Okay, thanks.
I'll explain later what happened there.
Yeah.
All right. So no superintendent's report, right?
I didn't have anything. I thought I shared a lot last time. So.
You're good. I just double checking.
Yep.
Okay. Moving into discussion items, we have a couple, three position descriptions. If you wanted to talk about those.
Sure. So we have an updated position description for our special education office coordinator. We had talked about that previously in executive session. I presented a job description for a school psychologist in anticipation of creating and posting a position for that, looking to see if we can get a qualified candidate for next school year, and also presenting a transportation paraprofessional job description, as we will likely need to hire a transportation paraprofessional if we can secure this placement that I was speaking of. Any questions about those job descriptions?
Questions?
I guess just it's regarding the transportation needs for special education.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
And that would be different than our current transportation provider and our current paradigm. How?
So our current provider, we checked, and I don't believe they're able to support this run. So we would be looking to a different contractor and would need another adult to ride along on the van for safety.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? I'll ask the question because I just don't know. We have enough need in the district to support a school psychologist ourselves?
We have substantial need. I mean, before we would be posting, we would look very critically at that, but I do believe that there are other local districts who have to contract for those services. So if we would have extra time of a person, we could possibly sell that out.
Okay.
Because that services we're currently paying for that we're
through the IU.
Agency.
Yes. Yeah. And some private contractors as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Approval of supplemental contracts for athletics. And they didn't show up in my report when I pulled it up. So those are teachers, or I'm sorry, those are coaches?
Yes, they're all coaches. I can read down through the list. Yeah, we were having some trouble with the system. Sorry. Things were added and then they disappeared. So it's Jill Steffen as head coach. I think they're all track positions, spring track positions. Jill Steffen, Quentin Schaefer, Keith Dempsey, Gabe Faust, Seth Landgraf, Glenn Wolf, Montana Paul as a volunteer coach, and Ryan Shoup as a spring weight room supervisor.
Okay. So I will say we'll need to have Ryan separately when we do the motion. Anybody have any other comments? Hearing none, thank you. We have a transportation contract. That's pretty standard. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about it or.
No, I
Yeah.
do not. Did we miss the substitute? We have a couple of substitutes. It's informational items as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I missed
Okay.
it.
So we have Ben Briggs will be subbing for Bailey Schaefer. We are still in need of a substitute for Aspen Troutman for roughly the same time period. And you will see, I don't know, Mr. Petrie, if the agenda still says that we're looking for a sub for Rachel Quigley's vacancy, but we have someone on tonight actually for that position.
Oh, okay. It does say that. I will make that correction. So we are not looking for Rachel. Delete. Got it.
Okay. Now we move on. We do have that. Any questions on any of those? Okay, moving on, we do have that transportation request.
That came in just today. That's a McKinney-Vento situation. The amount that's in that attached agreement, the cost would be shared with, is it Camp Hills? No.
Yes,
Is it Camp Hills School District?
I believe so.
Or East Pennsboro. I'm not sure. Whoever the other district is will pay half of it.
Okay. Plans, policies, and procedures.
You have none?
Okay.
None.
I didn't think so. I was just making sure. Now we have other discussion items, stadium update.
Yes, we wanted to talk about the stadium a bit. I don't know, Mr. Petrie or Mr. Troutman, if you would lead that off following our last meeting with Ernie.
And Mr. Keim as well. He was
Yes.
with me. So I can start if you'd like.
Sure.
I was not available the first time Ernie was here to meet with the district, so I had not met with him, talked with him. We were going down the road of the stadium project and got some budget numbers, got a conceptual drawing. We started reaching out, for sponsorship, things like that. And then we kind of hit the brakes just a little bit with our contract negotiations that are ongoing. And we felt we needed to come back to the table and let's talk about where we are now and where we can go and what does that look like. So we met with Ernie online. That was last week or was it this week? I can't remember. But anyway, I have a much clearer understanding of what it is that he's looking for as a next step. So up until the meeting, I was under the impression that, hey, Millersburg, I need you to take a vote, give me a decision. Are you doing a $4.1 million project or not? And time's of the essence. And, I didn't feel, and I think others shared the concern, I didn't feel that we were at a point to commit to that decision. In talking with him, what I now understand is that the first thing that we would need to do, which makes perfect sense now having gone through the building project, he would prepare a contract for us for the design and permitting. So right now, things are just kind of in rough draft form. We have a conceptual drawing. We have, budgetary amounts. The next step, just like we contracted with Crabtree for the building project, what we would do now is contract with him to get into the nuts and bolts of things. We're thinking that commitment and speaking with him is in the $170,000 range for that contract, which would allow him to do the formal design, get all the permits, do the soil sample test. There's a lot to go into a project like this before you commit to it. So, and again, going through the building project, this makes perfect sense now. So I said, oh, okay, I understand what you're asking for. And he said, and, the permit is good for 5 years. We talked about various things about phasing parts of the project together, and we can talk more about that. But so really, he's wanting the go-ahead from the board. Again, I don't have an exact amount. I don't have the contract. He's working on that. As soon as we get it, I will send it to Gareth to look at. But he's just looking at us to secure him and his services to do the architectural work that needs to be done, the designing, all the permitting and testing, and that's a lengthy process. So once we get that, we'll bring that to you. It does not, by moving ahead with that, it does not commit us to spend, the 4.1 million budget dollars that he gave us. Then, we're going to get into more finite detail. We're going to get more definite costs. We're going to look at different options of, timelines of how do we want to do this? How do we want to phase it? Just like we met with Crabtree in designing the elementary building, there's a whole portion of that. What if we put this over here? Those kind of things, until we can get to a finalized, everybody, the board and all are like, yep, that's the project we want to proceed with. At that point, that's when we are looking at committing the money to the project. So, and this, I'm using 170. We were just taking percents off of budgeted dollars and came up with that. I feel fairly confident it's going to be somewhere under 200,000 to engage with Ernie for his services. And once we have that, he said, I think that's a 12-month process. So he gets all the permits and everything. That's a 12-month process. So we would have a number of years, if that next year we don't feel comfortable financially, we can say, okay, Ernie, hit pause. We're going to look and see if we can do it next year. Or, hey, can we do the grandstands now, or the lights now, or whatever the case may be. But right now we need the project formally designed and permitted. So that's what came out of that conversation. Makes tons of sense to me now. We're, looking at hiring him to be the architect for the project, essentially. And we're, other than the contract with him to do that work, we're not obligated to spend another penny. If in year 2 or 3, we still don't have the money, we're not obligated to that. That would come when the board gives approval to move ahead with the project and fund the project. So that's the gist of the meeting. Again, there would be back and forth with design change. The board would be involved in that. Lee, Dan, or Corey, do you have anything additional to add from that meeting?
I just think the big takeaway for me was the expense of the permits to get the stormwater management permit and do all that paperwork. The time that takes was the thing that struck me. So again, just so everyone understands that 170,000 is just for his design and being an architect and project manager. The permits are extremely expensive and time consuming. Again, he's engaging with other people, civil engineers and so forth, to obtain these permits. So again, that cost is all wrapped up in that initial cost, which we need all that information to move forward, as Eric said. So otherwise, I think we did everything.
And that amount was included in the budget numbers that he provided to us. So, take that out of it, and now maybe you're down to a 3.9. Again, budgeted dollars. You have to understand that prices are going to change with time. Probably up, might go down, but probably up. So that's just a budget number of, are we talking, hey, Ernie, are we talking $10 million? Are we talking $2 million? He laid it out and said, I'm thinking you're talking 4.1, but that included the cost to contract with him to do this initial work.
Just so I'm clear, the preparatory work includes getting permits. Just the exploratory budgeting involves actually paying for permits.
Yes. Yeah. What I'm talking to you about now, what he's preparing for us, had the cost of the permits in there. Had the cost for all the legwork that he would need to do to design and hand us a project that, could be implemented.
Mr. Eggleston.
But why would we apply for permits prior to approving the project? I'm confused by this.
So what I understand was you don't know if you're able to do it, where you're able to do it. When you get the building permit, they do the soil test, again, for the ground structure and the stormwater management. You might not be able to set a bleacher or do this here because of your stormwater management. That the permits will dictate the design almost to some extent, from what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Again, that's what I took out of it.
Yeah, same. Think over to the elementary school project. We couldn't proceed with the project until we had a suitable approved plan, cost, approval for the stormwater management. Obviously, that's going to happen with this project as well. So unless you can get them to approve the plan and issue a permit, then he can't really design anything. We have to get that part done with the initial design.
Mr. Eggleston.
The way I see it is we really need two design options. One that's option 1 and 2, which is the lights and the seating where they currently sit, and one that would be the full project. Does this 170K provide a design for both of those options, or is it just the full $4.1 million project? And we would have to revisit this if we do not decide to do the field.
Yeah, so it is for the full project. That doesn't mean that we can't implement the project in phases. So this will get us all the permits, all the thumbs up, everything we need to do the entire project. If we split it up, Josh, what he told us, if I'm remembering this correctly, is that you may have to go through that permit processing twice, the application and processing. He said, let's just get it all done so that we, if we want to do the whole project, we can. If we want to do grandstands only, we can. If we want to do just lights, we can. The permitting would cover any and all parts of the project. Otherwise, you need separate permits.
Yeah, I'm cool with permitting. I meant more design, because obviously the layout of the lights are going to be different if we do not decide to do the full project. So that's why I'm wondering if we spend the $170K and go through this whole process, and then we decide we are not doing option 3, just options 1 and 2, are we going to have to redo the whole design process and cost more money? Or are we going to get every option possible with the $170K?
No, anything that we would do would be in preparation for the full project at some point in time. So in other words, the lights would be placed where they're supposed to be placed in that permitted approved design. Whether we do the field in 5 years or 10 years or whatever the case may be, those are going to be placed where they need to go. And I asked him that, and he verified again. He's like, they may not be, your new lights may not be focused 100% the way they should be if you're lighting up your existing field. He said, but very few people would notice that. And it would be by far better than, even when the old lights worked. That we had pointing at houses across the street. So, even a slightly skewed focus of the new lights would be a million times better than anything we've had in a long time. When we place the grandstands, whenever that happens, that's where they go in the master plan. If we do the field, that's going to require excavating over on the north side. We can do that now, do it later, but we're going to be permitted and approved for the entire project. And again, the permit's good for 5 years. And I believe he did say you could even request an extension, like say you don't decide to do it until year 4 or 5. If you're in progress, I think you can request an extension to your permit. I believe I remember him saying that.
So my last comment before Jason Miller goes, I was just going to say, I would like to see 2 designs in case our intent is never to do the field. I would like a design of what we're going to do with the existing lights on current field, and then a design of the entire project if we're doing the 4.1. Because I think it's either do it all or you're never going to do it all. So I'd hate to do part of it and put the lights up where they would fit if we were going to do a new field, and then we end up never doing it and they're not where they should be ideally. That's it for me. Over.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
So what is that breakdown? What is the breakdown for the total design versus the permits?
I don't have that. I don't have the contract at this point. He used a percentage off the total budgeted amount. He said that's generally how he comes up with an amount for the design and the permitting and the legwork he needs to do up front. I don't have a breakdown. And until I see a contract, I'm not sure. I mean, we can certainly ask him for that, but I can tell you he got there by using a percentage of the total cost.
Yeah, I got you.
Dan or Corey, do you recall? I thought I recalled from our initial meeting him mentioning $100,000 for permits.
That's kind of what I had in the back of my head, but I didn't want to say anything either. But yes, between the stormwater, the building permit, the stormwater being the biggest. But yes, that does stick in my head. Again, I like Eric said, once we have the breakdown in the contract, yeah, that does ring.
So I guess I'm not wildly convinced that, when we looked at I'm just going to look at the elementary project. We didn't have full sets of plans and permits to renovate Lankerville, to build a new campus. We didn't pay for full sets of plans for those 5 options, those 5 different options that we were handed. We were handed those 5 different options. We chose, and then we paid for the necessary permits, water runoff, etc., for the project we went with.
Sure.
I'm confused, whether it was your home or a commercial project like this, why we would put that cart so far in front. If you're looking at $100,000 for stormwater runoff, to Mr. Eggleston's point, and the taxpayers and the board only supports kind of returning, the only being able to afford the bare minimum, and then we waste $100,000 in stormwater runoff permitting that never comes to fruition, or gets pushed down the road and then is deemed to be no longer valid. Yes, it should have lasted 5 years, but Tanner's Run is now determined to be, you can't build anything anywhere. Like, who knows what those sorts of future development issues in this area that we're talking about. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and for us to pay for permitting before we've approved even being able to afford the project, I don't grasp that.
So, and that was so I would say in my head, the 5 options that we had for the school were obviously fleshed out a lot more and looked a lot more, they didn't look any more clean. They were more fleshed out, but they were still really preliminary. And that's kind of what we made our decision on. We didn't really know what the cost was going to be until it was designed. We're kind of at that spot, in my opinion, right now with the athletic field. You're right. We don't know exactly what it's going to cost, but we have a pretty good idea that it's going to cost, the whole thing's going to be $400,000 or $4 million, and it's going to be, I don't remember what the numbers were, $2 million for lights and bleachers and $1 million for lights. And then, so like, I kind of feel that's where we are at that point, Mr. Miller. So like, that's my corollary. Like, so as a board,
right, I think we need to determine which of those we're doing prior to paying for the design. I don't disagree at all. I agree. But as a board, have we voted on determining what to do?
No, we haven't, because we wanted to wait until we had a better feel for how negotiations were going to go. So go ahead, Mr. Anders.
So I'm pretty sure, but I'm not positive. I can pass this with Gareth. If we dig ground anywhere, like to put in the bleachers or whatever, I'm pretty sure we need a water runoff plan no matter what. Is that true or not, Gareth?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Mm-hmm. So no matter what, we're going to be stuck with that water runoff plan no matter what. So that we can't worry about Tanner's Run right now and all that. To even put bleachers in, we're going to have to pay for that. Is that way I'm understanding it, Gareth? I was pretty sure with that with the state also.
Yeah, yes. Yep, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think, that, and some of this disconnect maybe, we had done the subcommittee for the athletic project. And so I think, there's probably some members that have heard more than others. I think in general, the committee, when we looked at different things, I won't speak for the committee. Jason, you can do that, but it seemed to me like, okay, we want a master plan for our stadium. What parts and pieces we do of that and when, we need that master plan first. And then we can make decisions based on finances. But until you have that master plan that you're all moving towards, I don't think you're going to go anywhere. I think we'll just spin our wheels.
So we were looking for a master plan, but I think there's difference of opinion on whether we have that or not. Like, this is what we have is, I think, I think the committee felt like we have a plan. We have the plan. Like, we know what it looks like. But the reality is, if we're not willing to go the whole way, one of the things that Ernie said was that we shouldn't, if we're not committed to doing the whole project, we shouldn't put the lights where they would need to go because they're not going to be right. Like, that was his words, and maybe his words have changed. But like, he gave us a plan for the board to decide where we want to go next. So we will absolutely need to do permitting. We may need to do the exact same permitting. I don't know. And maybe that's a question. Would the permitting be different if we don't go the whole way? If we only do options 1 and 2, or we only do options 1, is there a difference in permitting? Obviously, the way he's calculating the cost he's going to charge us, there'll be a difference because that's a $2 million project versus a $4 million project. So if by percentage he's saying it's $200,000 for all the permitting, to me, that means it's $100,000 for part of the permitting. That might not be true, but maybe that's a question to ask.
Well, I do think it would be less, knowing that he used that percent, that makes sense. I guess my question is, can any of us say that at some point we don't need to do lights and grandstand and press box? Because we don't have them now, unless the board's decision is to not fully utilize the stadium. The only part of the master plan in my mind that was a question on the timing, when or if do you level the field and address the track? Maybe you do that all at the same time. Maybe you wait on that part, but we don't have lights and we don't have a grandstand or a press box. So I don't know that those are. I don't know.
Eric,
That's for the board to discuss.
Eric, what to my point was with the two different designs is I agree with you. We have to do lights and grandstand. We do not have to do field.
Correct.
And that's what my point is. I don't think you're going to get pushback from anyone that we don't have to do lights in the grandstand. I think what you're getting pushback of is, are we willing to do $2 million on a field where our sports programs are slowly declining and we may have other needs that we might want to put those $2 million in. And to Jason's point, if we're not going to entertain that, I'd rather put the lights where they're most advantageous for the current field and not have to worry about moving them or shifting them. I think that's what the board's saying with this. I don't think we're against permitting or even design, but I think we have to come to some type of agreement of what are we willing to do before moving forward. Because I think you're coming to a fork in the road and they're two very big different forks.
Could I jump in there, Josh? Just to answer that question, I think it'd be easier if I tell you that the lighting systems could be set back to where you would be able to place the track. That would just be a matter of realigning those lights, like regardless of which option you picked and this is an opinion, but I would suggest that we look at setting the lights back to where if at ever down the road, there would be a desire to put a synthetic track in, that the lighting piers would not need to be moved. So it's just a matter of orienting the lights, that them being set back is not, you follow what I'm saying? That they're going to be set the same place regardless of what we're going to do.
Well, I remember Ernie saying what Mr. Minnick said, though. It was, if you're not going to do that, put them where they currently are. So again, if that is a valid statement, and he would give us validation if we can put them in the overarching design and just shift them around and we'll get 100% coverage, cool. I'm good with it, but that's just not what I recall him saying. I recall him saying what Mr. Minnick alluded to, which was, don't put them there if you're not going to do it, the whole project. So, but yeah, if that's not valid, or if you guys heard differently in a different meeting, that's cool. I would just like to hear that from him. Over.
Yeah, as long as we can make them point where we need to make them point, I don't care where we put them. That's me being as blunt as I can be. So if it is possible to realign them, but again, yeah, that wasn't what he kind of said that first meeting. So if that is possible, yeah.
For those of you that were on the call, am I not? I mean, I specifically asked him that question. Did I not, about the lights? And I don't know that it really impacts the home side. You know, those lights and grandstands are going to be where they're going to be. It only affects over on the north side, you know, whether the poles go in what is now at the bottom of the bank or they get pushed back. Because if you do a track, you're going to be tearing out that area of the visitor side bleachers. So it would just make room for the future. So you're not talking about a big difference. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong. He said that was not a big deal, that no one would even notice that. I'm not making that up, am I?
You are correct. What he said at the first original meeting, these gentlemen heard, it was, if you're never ever, there's not a chance in the world that you're going to do the track in the field, that it won't look right for perpetuity. Then, like, why in the world would they set the lights way back like that? Just aesthetically, if you're never going to do it, was his point. He did say in the meeting that we had, our second meeting, I'll call it, that Mr. Petrie was a part of, was you can set them there. Now, again, you're going to pull up in it. Why do they have a light post set like that? Again, if the track and the field aren't in, it is just a matter of aiming those lights, though. He even gave a cost. I don't really recall what that cost was. Was it $5,000 to $7,000 to have a company come in and realign these lights? So say we know for 10 years, or we have no reason right now, but the board's appetite would be to set the poles back just in case 15 years from now we decide to put a track in. Okay, good, do it. Now, again, today's money, you're talking 5,000 to 7,000 was a number that sticks in my head for a company coming back, must go and realigning and spotting the lights accordingly.
I kind of feel the opposite. Like, why would we put them down where they are now with the chance that somewhere down the road the district may want to do that track and then have to move them, which would be very costly. I just put them back so we have the space, temporarily aim them so they work for what we have right now. And then you're future proofed. You have that space if or when the time comes you want to do the field and the track. That to me seems like a safer route to go.
I don't think anyone. I think it's as long as they're going to point where they're supposed to. Mr. Diffendorfer.
Yeah, I want to agree with Dan from our meetings before. What I think was more an aesthetic thing and how they would look if we never do the field and the track. Plus, you said you would have to, repoint them. And I agree with that figure, Dan. I believe, like the 5,000 to 7,000 is what he said for that. That at least was my understanding of the whole thing, and it wouldn't look the best, but I don't think that's a concern how they look as far as that goes. I guess my question is all this discussion. I know we started out with the contract thing. That is still the main point though for tonight, right? Is that setting him up with a contract? Is that correct?
My thought was, let's get everyone on the same page. Again, we had the subcommittee, and I think some people heard more than others. Let's get everyone on the same page and explain, what is the next step. It's, for me, until I had this meeting, I'm thinking that, holy cow, we got to go to the school board and they have to vote to spend $4.1 million or not. That's not the case. That's not where we're at in this project.
I think.
Okay, understood. That was my question.
I think the question though, Eric, is, well, the question is, do we just go ahead and do the design for everything, or do we do the design for part of it? Like, that was the idea. We had the master plan, and that's kind of where we got kind of bogged down because we were trying to figure the money part out. And to Mr. Miller's point, do we want to spend $200,000 on permits that we may never use? So I think if I'm hearing the board, the question would be, is there really a difference in the permitting and the design to do part or to do both? Like, I think that's where the board's at. That's what I'm hearing from the board. Mrs. Mongol, I see you're off mute.
So I'm just listening to everybody's question, and being a board member who wasn't part of the subcommittee, I'm just wondering if maybe there would be some value in having Ernie come address the whole board, so people who were not part of the subcommittee could ask their questions to him directly, instead of, I think I heard him say this, well, I think I heard him say this. I know the value of having the subcommittee was to kind of not have it necessarily be a cumbersome process for the whole board, but I don't feel like enough of us feel like we have enough information to make a decision that we're comfortable with because of the questions that we have. So maybe if it's possible to get him here to do a presentation and sort of explain things to all 9 of us at the same time to make sure that we're all hearing the same information and understanding, and have the ability to ask questions directly to the source before we're asked to make a decision that could ultimately wind up costing $4.1 million. I think I would be in favor of that.
I would have to agree with that, Tennille. And especially since it's been kind of off our radar for a few months, and how things go after a few months, you just might not recall them the way that he said them. And I agree. I think having everybody on the same path and knowing the same information would be definitely the wise thing to do.
Thank you, Tennille, for articulating what I was trying to say. That this, in my opinion, has gone beyond a partial board discussion. As much as I appreciate that work being done, I can't vote on $4.1 million without being very clear on questions. So I thank you, Tennille.
So that I'm clear, we weren't talking about voting on $4.1 million. We were talking about 200,000-ish for permitting. But what I'm hearing from the board is we would like to try and engage Ernie to have a full board conversation. I don't know if it would be in person. It may have to be virtual. He's from not around here, but we might catch him coming through, which is how we got him the last time. Is that kind of where?
So I
everybody's at?
just to clarify, I understand that we're not having a discussion about $4.1 million or not. I think for me personally, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but for me personally, I don't feel confident in the information that I've been given tonight to even make a decision on $200,000 worth of permitting to be accosted by a community member at Wise or Reed's or Shell while I'm getting gas that might have questions about what that money is being spent on or why. So I want to be able to have informed conversations with the community members that I've been elected to make decisions for. I want to be able to have educated conversations instead of just like, well, I don't know, that was just what the committee said. Like, I'm personally not comfortable with that. So if it's a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting, I would like to be able to absorb some information and be able to ask questions firsthand and hear the answers so I can make sense of it, to make sure that I have a firm foundation to have conversations with people outside of these meetings if I should be asked a question.
And I think tonight's discussion was, exactly as you're saying, is how do we get this from subcommittee back to a committee as a whole and get everyone informed and on the same page. And I don't know that was even our total intent tonight. What I wanted to provide tonight is, hey, folks, realize you're not going to be asked to vote on 4.1 million. We're going to have him draft a contract that will allow him to make the plan, get the permits, make sure that everything is approved and feasible and can happen. In other words, do you want Ernie as your architect, or do you want to look somewhere else? Is essentially the next step. And we don't even have the contract yet to share so that information I wanted to put out there to you, that I got a lot of information from my meeting. You all probably would benefit from the same. I don't deny that maybe that could be the next step or should be the next step. I just wanted everyone to, because I know when I said, I gave my feedback of, hey, we have this contract. I don't know how comfortable I am agreeing to 4.1 million. That's not where we are. It's not where we are. We're not close to that point yet.
Mr. Adams?
Eric, you may have answered my question, but I want to, I guess, articulate where I'm hung up, even if maybe others have already said it. My question is, I think there's a very distinct possibility that we don't do the $4 million project. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But there's a significant chance we don't. So would we enter into this contract if we decided to do the partial project? Would we have wasted money on permits we didn't need entering into this contract?
I think Ernie would need to answer that question. The question that was asked earlier, when we start disturbing dirt, at what point do we need the permits anyway to do anything? If we're going to have to deal with stormwater, which we will no matter what we do up there, I don't know. We could maybe save a little money on the design end of things, like, hey, Ernie, don't spend time designing an all-weather track, yeah, there would be a little savings there, I would imagine, in the design aspect, but he would need to answer that. As far as what we would save in permitting and design, I can't answer it.
So what I'm hearing, it sounds like the board needs to have a meeting with Ernie.
We'll work to set that up.
Anything else on the stadium? All right, next thing is a facility use request.
Actually, yes, I do think informationally, I'm sorry, Jason, informationally, I do think we want to share something on the stadium, and I would look to Corey, and that's as far as where we stand with our plans for the spring, because that's the thing that's immediately staring us in the face with track season. And I believe we're looking at figuring out what we can do for a sound system for this spring. Lights, grandstand, not a big deal for the spring. But Corey, do you want to add anything to that, where you are and the discussions that you've had regarding how we get from where we are to where we need to be in the project?
Sure. The options that we have for the spring are, we can do what we did in the fall as far as renting a sound system, or we can use that money, we can just purchase a unit that we would be able to use in whatever the stadium looks like. And once we have a press box and we have those things replaced, and then set that in that new facility. If we purchase, obviously if we're going to have to purchase one way or the other, purchasing sooner than later might make sense, although it does mean that we're going to have some form of a place to be able to house it. But for the spring, at minimum, what we need is a sound system, or we look at a rental system for the spring. And anything that we don't do between now and next fall ends up being, we're going to need the same PA system or APA system that functions to suit what we need. Other than that, I think as far as immediate needs, that would address the immediate needs for the facility for us to be able to hold track meets.
So Corey, you had talked about the need for a building to house the equipment. Am I remembering that correctly, or?
That would be ideal, yes. So we have a place to keep stuff dry. For the fall, for those of you that were in attendance, where we had placed we were transporting the PA system, but that is not going to allow us to do that, for the spring, because we were located on the track. So we're going to need to do something that's to protect the equipment that we're going to have. We're going to have to figure something out that obviously doesn't impede on the track itself.
So before I let Josh talk, what I was talking about was a building to store like the track equipment by the end of the season.
We're looking at options that currently exist to see if we can get to fit them. I don't know whether or not we can, because we don't even have the track equipment yet. That order has been placed, but until we have the pit, the dimensions and whatnot, we think that we might be able to fit it if with some minimal cost to try and use the space that we have a bit more efficiently.
Okay, Mr. Eggleston.
Just a couple quick questions. Like, for the sound system, does that technology change quickly? Or is it a relatively stable market? Whereas like if we buy it now and we wouldn't get this project implemented in 2 years, the quality wouldn't be drastically different.
Well, I believe that depends on whether you buy, low, medium, or high grade equipment.
Okay.
But no, I don't believe it's subject to a lot of technology change. Some change,
Sure.
we would prefer it be a Bluetooth capable system, that we don't end up having to have everything hardwired to the speakers and then have to run wire underground to power them. But no, I would think that it's not like a computer,
Okay.
where it's, where you're working with an obsolete model in 2 years.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Mhm.
And my other question, this might be a rabbit hole we don't want to go down tonight, is for the fall sports. Are we starting to look at what our best options are there? I know, like we talked about, maybe doing sporting events earlier in the day to avoid lighting. I believe it was thrown out that Upper Dolphin offered to allow us to use their fields and things. Are we looking at that yet, or is that just a little bit too far down the road to start those conversations?
No, Dr. Bisdell informed us or instructed Mike and I to be looking into that.
Okay.
And we have done some of the legwork into that. And
Okay.
the options are, well, our concerns are not as great because I believe our biggest concern is that we're not going to be able to secure officials if we move to earlier. But in talking with the official assigner, he believes that he would be able to accommodate us at earlier starts,
Okay.
so that we would be finished prior to dark. And unless directed otherwise, I think that would probably be the best avenue, at
Okay.
least as of this moment.
Thank you.
hmm
Anything else for the stadium?
So, guys, quick question again. So, like, when are we being asked to make a decision on the PA system by next voting meeting? That's something we need to do. Just trying to understand expectations for the board on that comment.
I don't know that we'll have something prepared by the voting meeting, but obviously something would need to happen in the near future. There's also thought that it may still be insurance coverage as well. So
Sure.
at least rental.
Okay.
But I don't, at least sitting here tonight, I don't think I'm going to have anything ready for you to vote on in 2 weeks to spend money on a sound system. I don't think.
Okay.
I think it would make sense as you're doing that to have, at least for the meeting where we're talking about it, how much does it cost to buy equipment? Where would we store it versus the cost to rent equipment? If we can have that for the discussion meeting, it would really help us figure out which way we want to go for the voting meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Miller.
And I just think, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Petrie. The insurance is also the elephant in the room for me with regards to returning us to where we were, having gone through an event in my life where, you find that you're underinsured for what you thought you had. Getting that clarity in that meeting would be appreciated, because to put us back to where we were hypothetically is an insurance situation, and an additional 4.1 million on top of that is the part that I'm really struggling with. So finding out what insurance has covered, why it's not returning us to where we were, all those situations, in addition to talking to Ernie with questions on phases and whatnot. I would like some clarity on that, please, during that meeting.
At the next voting meeting, is that when you're asking for that, Jason?
Yes, I guess that would be when I would be asking for that, yes. Or during that meeting with a meeting of the whole of some sort with regards to the stadium.
Okay.
Because I'm there's a little disconnect in my mind, and I think that back to Neil's point, the smaller committee made sense. I just have so many questions with it in regards to insurance and a tax increase to have to pay for something that was destroyed by a storm is bothersome.
Well, my take on that, and I don't have the numbers in front of me here, but what you said is accurate. The insurance is there, less deductible to put you back to whole to what you had. And I think they are doing that. I don't know that we're done with that process yet. The big, I wouldn't say the big question, but one question is how much longer, we're going to be out of the stadium. Are they going to continue to pay for us to rent an audio system and things like that? Would they pay for us to continue renting lights, even though we don't really want to go down that road? But in the conversations that I've had with them, the idea is to get us back to whole. And so far that's what they've been, we can argue over the values of what they provided, but so far everything has seemed to be fair. The allowance for the equipment, the athletic directors looked at and thought that amount was fair. Mr. Harris looked at the amount for the building. He thought that was fair. Now, putting us back to where we were, so they're going to say, well, you can repair those bleachers. We can weld some bars at the top. Well, okay, you can. Is that what the district really wants to do? You can. The one thing that's kind of up in the air a little bit yet that we're trying to figure out is the electric work that's needed up there. They're going to pay to put us back to where we were. So if we need new wiring run, they'll pay for that. If they need to come in and turn the posts and go up and refocus the lights, they'll do that. And they'll provide an allowance for that. Is that what we want? Is that what we want to do?
So I don't understand then why Ernie's costs would not be part of the insurance. This is my hang up. In order to be, we're not looking at actual cash value of the oldie-timey grandstand. Like, I understand. We have replacement cost coverage. So replacement cost is putting us back to where we were. That should include design, permitting, materials, installation. This is my confusion.
It would, for anything that would need to be done with existing lights, sound system, that it would. If we said rebuild the press box exactly like it was, it would include permitting for that project. So it does include those things. What we're doing with Ernie is looking at designing something new, better, upgraded. But I mean, whatever direction the board wants to go is fine with me.
So
you can take that insurance money and get back to where you were. You can do that.
Okay, but you don't get returned to exactly where you were. You get returned to replacement cost. So the replacement cost is new. There's new code now compared to whenever that had been built. It doesn't get built according to how it was built 20 years ago, 40 years ago. It gets built according to current code.
Correct.
So if you know, to build
For the press box, yes.
the press box or the bleachers, no?
Well, if the press box were put back in place, the bleachers have some twisting, and it's debatable, when that occurred. But if that press box were in place, you no longer have a gaping hole at the top. My question on that is, yeah, but how do you get in there and rebuild a press box without having to move the existing bleachers? And at that point, I would question, all right, if you're moving them, do you not now have to bring them up to code? But if they think they could build that press box right where it was, the way it was, fill that hole, we're back to where we were. We still have aged bleachers, but we're back to where we were.
So I think so, and I'll let Mr. Enders have a word in a second. If we want to talk about just going back to where we were, I would recommend we have someone look at our bleachers and determine if they are still safe. When was the last time they had an inspection? Like that would be something I would like to know. Because that should be part of that conversation.
It was actually last fall, Mr. Minnick, when the insurance company, they sent a structural engineer up from Philadelphia and inspected those and did a report, pictures, the whole 9 yards. The guy was on site for a couple hours. So if we do have that report.
And they're structurally sound that we can keep using them.
That's what he said.
That is correct.
Now, our insurance company doesn't like that. They have our liability insurance has issue with the bleachers, but they're structurally sound according to the engineer that the insurance company brought on site to inspect them.
Mr. Enders?
My question is, do they meet code? Are they up to date with code? Because I know if we start messing with them, it's got to be all brought up to standard code, sort of like the elementary school. Everything would have had to been brought up to code. Is that a true or false statement, Gareth? I'm not positive. I just wanted to check on that also.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
That's kind of another unknown. Like, at what point are you touching the bleachers enough to require that?
Right, and that's what I said. How do you rebuild that press box if that's what we want done without moving those bleachers? And is that then enough to cause them to need to be upgraded? But in theory, if they can go in there and build that press box exactly where it was, exactly like it was, and not touch those bleachers, then I think the answer is no, they don't need to be brought up to code because you haven't done anything to them.
And there are lawyers, and I don't know if Stock and Leader gets involved in this, but that fights on your behalf when it comes to insurance people. Insurance brokerages make money by not paying if they don't have to. And there are lawyers that fight on your behalf and push back. Like if there's a discrepancy between what being made whole compared to what the insurance looks like, compared to what an inspector looked like or looked at, 9 months ago, are we looking at just, some litigation to solve that problem?
So that, I think any more information from like and we don't need it for tonight because we need to move on. We're just gonna dig a deeper hole. But anything from our insurance about why they don't necessarily agree with that, maybe it is worth looking at having a second opinion, you know, that we could look into that as well. But I think that makes sense for tonight. Mr. Enders, do you have anything else since your hand is up?
No, disregard that.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure. All right. Is everyone okay with this moving on for tonight? All right. Now we have a facility use request. And again, it didn't show up on my printout. Guessing it's just a Sunday request.
It's for first bingo on a Sunday in late April. Yes.
Okay.
For Millersburg Little League.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Any question? Next is the school calendar, which I do have, but you can go ahead, Lee.
Oh, okay. Are you all able to see it? Because for some reason I cannot. But
I downloaded it and made a PDF. So I have it. I don't know if I could see it right now.
okay. So we have a draft calendar prepared. It does align with Upper Dolphins start date for co-op sports. It takes into consideration election days. We have tentative professional for the in-service days. Any particular questions about that draft calendar?
Anything? Wow, that's interesting. We always have questions on the calendar.
Well, if you think of any, feel free to reach out.
All right. All right, let me go back. So that was the last thing under our discussion items, time sensitive voting. And I will say I have what's on the agenda. I don't have any of the attachments. So I see personnel. I see two resignations.
Yes.
Does everyone else know what they are? Because like I said, I do not.
Oh, sorry, we can read them out. So 2 resignations, the first being for a power professional, Carla Klauser, effective February 13th. The second one, and these are separate items intentionally. The second is the resignation of Lindsay Adams as a 5-hour aide effective February 21st. And we will need separate votes on those.
Okay. Do I have, gosh, this is very hard. For the paraprofessional, do I have a motion?
Yeah.
Mr. Enders, do I have a second?
Yes.
Mrs. Mongold, any question? We're doing the paraprofessional. Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Diffenderfer?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Enders?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Mrs. Gray had to step off the call, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Mungold?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Minnick?
Yes. All right, the next one is the resignation of the 5-hour aide, Lindsay Adams. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Miller, second.
Yes.
Mrs. Mongold, any question? Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Adams?
Abstain.
Mr. Diffenderfer?
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston?
Yes.
Mr. Enders?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Mungold?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Minnick?
Yes. Next we have, and can we do these together, you think?
I believe you probably can. 2 recommendations for employment. The first being a paraprofessional, Deborah Himmelreich, She will replace Carla Clauser. And then we have a first grade teacher recommended to employ Kelly Gruber as a first grade teacher at a salary of $48,311, step 3 bachelor's column of the current CBA.
Do I have a motion to approve those two?
So moved.
Mrs. Mungle,
Second.
second. Mr. Enders, any question? Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Diffenderfer,
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston,
Yes.
Mr. Enders,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Mungold,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick.
Yes. And it looks like the last one is an approval of a substitute, approval for Ellen Secor,
Secor, yeah.
pending necessary paperwork. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Mrs. Mongold, second. I heard Mr. Diffendorfer.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Any question? Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Diffenderfer,
Yes.
Mr. Eggleston,
Yes.
Mr. Enders,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller,
Yep.
Mrs. Mungold,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick.
Yes.
And I would just add, and maybe Gareth can chime in here, I believe you will see these again. Those items that you just voted on, we will re-ratify them on the 20th. And Gareth, do you want to explain the thinking with that?
Because we're meeting virtually tonight, and it's a little unusual to do that, and looking through the policy language to be safe, I recommended that we vote on them a second time and ratify your votes tonight when we're back in person at your next voting meeting. So you'll see them again at the next meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. The only other things on the agenda, board member sharing.
I have something I'd just like to add to Mr. Kimes. He recognized Emma Miller for scoring her 1,000th point. I think it's also worth noting that she is the first female basketball player in Millersburg basketball history to record both 1,000 rebounds and 1,000 points. So not just one milestone, but she technically made 3 because she got her 1,000th rebound last year, her 1,000th point this year, and she is the first female basketball player to ever do that at Millersburg. So congratulations to her and her teammates that helped make that possible over the last 4 years of her career. And I think that it's also worth recommending or recognizing that Upper Dauphin was very accommodative in her scoring her 1,000th point at their gym. They allowed us to stop the game and get some pictures and take some time away from the event at their school to recognize her in the way that she deserved to be recognized. So thank you to the athletic director and Coach Huffman and everybody at Upper Dauphin that let that be an event for her to make that memory.
Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Daniil. I would just like to take all credit for Emma's accomplishments. She couldn't do it without her awesome head coach. No, also very proud of the girls that have gone through, albeit a rough season. It was a success in that they all improved. They all stuck with it. There were no quitting. Nobody, very little infighting, having gone through this for 7 years now. It's the end of this era for her, for I, but I'm very proud of her very proud of the girls that, like Tennille said, that made that possible. And it was awesome support. The junior high girls that could have left, they stayed. The bus driver stayed for an extra half to see it, to recognize it, and to applaud it. And I was very proud to be a Millersburg Indian. And thank you very much to, like Tennille said, to Coach Huffman and everybody up there at UDA. I know we have our moments with them, but it's one of those moments where the Valley came together. Everybody applauded. It was great. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other board member sharing? All right, President's report, just a couple. We did have a negotiations meeting prior to our meeting tonight, which was of course an exec session for the negotiations committee. For the board, Mr. Diffendorfer is going to need to step down from his role on the CAIU board. So we are looking for a board member again. If you have any interest in that, talk to me. We can go through what that looks like, or talk to Mr. Diffendorfer or Mr. Miller. They both have also served in that role in the past several years. But we really do not want to jeopardize losing our seat there. I think it's an important thing to have. The only other thing is that we are going to move after this meeting. We'll adjourn the meeting, but we'll move into an exec session to talk about safety and security issues. And I guess probably personnel as well. To have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. Can we take like 10 minutes? That would be awesome. So how about at 7:55, we'll get back on.
Do we have a separate link for that?
I was going to say, I think there should be a separate link, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.